So I've written 2 pieces of fiction that have the word party in the title. And I always just wanted to theme a reading around that somehow. So I'm doing that today. One of the parties is my novel, The Party Upstairs, which was published this past summer. And the other is a short story published in AQR called X Party. And the parties in both of these kind of overlap weirdly. I realized when I was thinking about it. Both are kind of about power and gender and class. Both have ghosts, sort of. And they're looking at how these forces can affect ideas around art. So I thought what I might do first is just read a little bit from my novel, which I'm just going to read from the beginning so I don't have to give a lot of backstory. But I'll say The Party Upstairs is about a middle-aged building superintendent on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, Martin, and his 24-year-old daughter, Ruby, who's just moved back in. And Martin has to deal with a lot of different tensions from the kind of increasingly wealthy tenants in the building and has to manage all of this in his head. So the scene I'm going to read from isn't a party exactly. It's actually a meditation session, which in some ways should be the opposite of a party. But Martin's head kind of lights up with different people. And so, yeah, I'm just going to read a little bit from this meditation scene that he is in the middle of. The opposite of mindful contemplation, probably, was contemplating another man's real estate. Martin's back had gone stiff, his knees creaked, and yet the older he got, the more nimbly his brain made wild leaps through time and space. He was supposed to be here, present, meditating next to his daughter, not thinking about Lily's death or Kenneth's apartments or the pigeons in the courtyard. He breathed in, he breathed out. But then the heat pipe in the living room thumped, and he remembered how the woman in 4B had recently complained about the thumping sound coming from 5B, which was caused by the private tango lessons the woman in 5B was taking with the woman in 2C, who had recently divorced the man who had once lived in 7D, and who had lost his job in advertising just around the time Ruby graduated, and was now in the process of selling his apartment to an heiress whose financial consultant lived in 6C, and had complained recently about a leak caused by the attendant to the sick lady in 7C, who poured grease down the kitchen sink, didn't know any better, and who rode the subway from the Bronx every morning with the nanny in 3A, whose young charges tried to poison with cayenne-infused chocolate the pair of yipping Yorkies in 3D, an act of pure malice that didn't much bother anybody, but especially not the attorney in 7A, who had seen the dogs pissing directly onto the red and white impatiens she had asked to be planted in the tree pit outside the building, which were popular flowers with some in the building, yes, but others, like the real estate guy from Lyon in 6B and the financial consultant from Moscow in 8C, felt impatiens were tacky and populist and had tried to advocate for something more elegant, begonias perhaps, and also wanted the green awning to be replaced with a burgundy one. But 9D had argued against both begonias and the burgundy color, mostly because he believed 8C was responsible for bringing in the new team of Russian elevator mechanics who had, in the past, worked on missiles in what 7C was pretty sure these mechanics still called the motherland, and who 7C was also pretty sure were spies of some sort. A suspicion she had confided exclusively, she thought, to 3A. But 3A blabbered about it to the board members, and her blabbering had backfired, so that now 7C was considered a paranoid woman, a possible isolationist bigot, and a loose cannon, which was probably true since after the attacks on September 11th, 7C had spent weeks in Westchester calling Martin about an oncoming toxic cloud headed for Manhattan and asking if he could double check that the windows were all the way closed in the apartment, which was actually the same request made by 7B, who recently had maybe got bed bugs. They blamed the house cleaner, leading 4B, once the news got out, to panic and do laundry for 6 hours straight, which really pissed off 1D because they had kids and the kids had soccer practice, and 4B, whose child merely finger painted and did no competitive sports at all, was using all the machines, which 4B said was a necessary thing because didn't 1D hear about the bedbugs in 7B? And 1D said the bedbugs were just a rumor. The bedbug dog from Queens had come in and sensed nothing. But still, the paranoia reached such a pitch that many of 7B's belongings eventually wound up in the basement, and Martin and Raphael, the porter, had to drag armoires and mattresses and books and clothes out into the courtyard and into the alley and up the stairs for the garbage people to take away, to waste transfer centers, to barges, to landfills, to landfills, to landfills. Martin's heart, that dumb, flawed blood hauler, made sounds like a garbage truck in his chest. He had fucked up mindfulness again. So there's kind of a big party going on in Martin's head, and his own voice is getting hijacked by this very long sentence with all these tenants kind of yapping at him in some ways. And I kind of like the way that pairs with the short story I'm going to read a little bit of, Ex Party. So Ex Party is told in this first person plural voice, so this we voice, and it's a bunch of these voices kind of converging into one. And I wasn't sure if that was going to be the voice when I started it. It just was my way in, and it ended up sticking. And so Ex Party is about a party of someone's exes, but you'll see it. When the jasmine-scented letters arrived in the mail that August afternoon, most of us thought they were a joke. You are formally requested to attend a gathering of my ex-lovers at my abode. Wine and summer snacks provided. No plus ones, please. XO Corbin. All of us receiving the invitations were women, and yes, all of us were the ex-lovers of Corbin. We were also med students and administrative assistants and lab techs and artists and cashiers and waitresses and gallery assistants and college students and dancers and librarians and programmers and nannies and journalists. We had many differences, yet we had suddenly been curated without consent, placed together by Corbin into a single mass. Our names weren't even on our actual invitations. Hi, you, was all the cardstock salutation said. Oh, hey, Corbin, you ass. But let's be fair. In some ways, it made sense that Corbin would internally clump us all together, the ex-lovers. A baby, when first born, can differentiate the faces not only of humans, but also of apes. A human baby can tell ape number 23 from ape number 12, no problem. As we get older, though, we can differentiate easily only between human faces. The apes all begin to seem the same to us, melding into one hirsute, not me. Over the months and years, Corbin probably stopped being able to differentiate us as real individuals too. It was not all his fault. It was the fault of time as well, and of the patriarchal, etc. And in general, we tried to be understanding of his limitations. Still, because of who he was, there were certain ways Corbin wasn't limited at all. While our first impulse, as we already said, was to dismiss the invites as a joke, we quickly reconsidered. We all knew Corbin enough to understand that a prank could evolve by the sheer force of his pretentiousness and intergenerational wealth into what he called a performance piece. We might be his subjects, which was kind of gross. All of us said to ourselves, nope, not going. We thought dignity, we thought pride. But when the night of the party arrived, a few of us thought, bellies grumbling, free wine and summer snacks? We were eager to know about these snacks of summer. Also, we were eager to know about each other. Corbin had always been close-lipped about former girlfriends. He liked to say, I don't see myself defined by past relationships. Only now, here he was, defining something about himself with this event. We were just not yet sure what he was defining. And if we didn't attend, we'd never know. All of us arrived at his house exactly 45 minutes after the proposed party start time, meaning all of us had the same definition of fashionably late. We tramped across the greenest parts of his lawn. We eyed the flowers bursting from the shrubs and tried in vain to remember what those flowers were called. We smiled at each other, refusing to size each other up as we said things like, "I wasn't going to show here either, is what's funny, but then I just got so curious." We rang the doorbell. Nobody emerged. We knocked. Nothing. At last, we tried the door. It was unlocked. We marched inside. In the living room sat a table stacked with glitteringly dark bottles of wine and with cheese that stank in a way that made the roofs of our mouths smart. We saw crescent slices of green apples, mini caprese skewers, frozen watermelon slices on popsicle sticks, white bean hummus drizzled with lemon juice. There were nearly 24 of us staring at these snacks, but no Corbin. Just a note by the hummus that said, "Out to get more wine, BRB." On the discovery of the note, a long silence. The dashes he'd put in BRB were enraging. They made us think about the way Corbin had narrowed his eyes at us the second we disagreed with one of his theories about life/art/human relationships, or when we brought up, during one of his long-winded spiels about how hard he worked to get where he was, that his grandparents just happened to own buildings in Manhattan and San Francisco that they'd sold for $1 gazillion. In front of the snacks, we took deep, centering breaths. Most of us had shown up to the X party trying to remind ourselves that Corbin wasn't all bad, that it was easy after a breakup to only remember the shitheadiest parts of someone, and that we took a more nuanced view. We made a point before going to the party to remember the thoughtful birthday gifts, the first editions of books we loved, and how mindfully Corbin would ask us about our days at work, and how before sex he would cook elaborate meals for us, full of unexpected ingredients, quail eggs and roasted fennel, and once, upon finding out the many hours of childhood one of us devoted to playing the computer game Oregon Trail, an actual slab of venison. We had gathered to the front of our minds all sorts of goodwill, like a woolly blanket, to keep us from getting too bitterly cold at this X party. But now this, BRB. "There's still plenty of wine," we said to each other then, and we began to drink, trying to resist the urge to text Corbin. Less shyly now, we looked around. Some of us wore cocktail dresses, and some of us wore expensive ripped jeans, and some of us wore cheap non-ripped jeans, and some of us wore blazers despite the heat, as if silken lining might protect us from the possibility of shame. Also, one of us had dressed as a ghost, a light blue sheet over her head. "Because he ghosted me," she said in a low voice through a hole in the sheet. "This invite's the first thing I've heard from him in months." She said she wanted to reappropriate this party, his probable performance piece, as her own performance piece. "I'm wearing the sheet we fucked on," she told us. Her faith in an overwrought pun to reappropriate anything at all, ever, made the hearts of the rest of us sink a little, both because the attempt seemed misguided and because the ghosted pun seemed like one that Corbin himself would utter and delight in. I'll stop there.